Now YouTubers, part 3. As you can see, with the big hole where the gearbox used to be, gearbox is just there, and we can see the pressure plate here. Now there's going to be 6 bolts around it, so 1, 2 and all the way around. So we're going to take these 6 bolts off, and then I'm going to show you the clutch. They look to be 12mm bolts. Now as you can see, new and old. Now, like I actually originally said, it's only just a clutch that's gone on this. You can see it's really close to the rivets, and obviously there's a lot more thickness in that one than there is in the old one. This pressure plate obviously looks fine, it's not broken or damaged, but I guarantee these springs are weak, so you're just better replacing everything. This is a good time anyway, just to check to make sure everything is right. Put the new clutch on the spindle of the gearbox just to make sure it fits in, and it does, as you can see. Make sure everything's the same length, everything kind of fits. Now with pressure plates, don't be worried if they look slightly different. Now as you can see, there's more springs on this than there is this, more fork springs. Don't worry about it, as long as they're the same size, you know, the same height, the bolts line up, which they do, and the clutch is the same. That's all you really need to worry about. So that's the clutch looked at, and this is the bearing. And obviously we get a new bearing. So we can just literally clip this off. It's hard to do when I'm holding the camera. Just pull this clip to the side. I've just literally pulled this clip off because obviously we don't need it. Now, it's the old bearing against the new one. Again, worth changing, do everything. Don't have to worry about it, might as well do it right. Now as you can see, I've got the new clip on. I couldn't do it and film at the same time. But you basically got this little clip here, and as you can see there's 2 ends on it, and they have to clip round the actual fork of the bearing or the release box. Just this fella here, you can see it's moving up and down. So they just basically hold the bearing onto the fork. It's very simple, they just clip in either side, but I couldn't do it and film it at the same time. So now we're going to line up the clutch and ready to bang it back in. Again, I apologise about this video, YouTubers. I am trying, but it's very difficult to do this on my own. Basically, this is a clutch centering tool. It's very simple, it's just a bit of plastic. They're very, very cheap, only a couple of quid. You get different ends depending on how big the centre of the clutch is. But basically all you do is you feed it through the pressure plate. I'm going to have to put this together and then turn the camera back on and show you. As you see, clutch centering tool, pressure plate and clutch. Now it's important, as you can see, from one end of this clutch sticks out a lot further than the other end. Now sometimes they're written on the clutch, it says gearbox side. This part sticking out further on this side has to go to the gearbox side, and what I mean by that is has to go to the pressure plate. If you turn it that way, it's going to hit on the flywheel and you're not going to have a proper clutch. So make sure you put it in the right way. Now all I need to do now is get my clutch centering tool, feed it straight through the release bearing and through to the clutch. As you can see, it's sticking out. When I screw the middle bar in, this pin goes in, which tightens it around for me. As you can see, that's going in. Now it's getting tight there now. It's good. Turn the big nut at the back to make it tight against the springs. Now what I'm trying to do is, this clutch is quite tight now. So it's quite tight in the middle, it's not moving up and down. And now what I'm trying to do is, you can see the little marks here, there's one there, and I'm trying to line this clutch so I get the same thickness of metal all the way around. It is quite easy, it just takes a bit of moving. Once then you're happy with it, because the better you get this, the easier it is to put the gearbox in. So I'd advise you to take your time on this, get it as good as you can, and it'll make your life so much easier. Now I'm just screwing that in the back. Now, I reckon, might not be able to see, but I reckon that is good. And it's as simple as that to line up your clutch. Simple. And that will make your life so much easier. What I want to do is, before we put anything back in, is to give it a blowout with the airline. Now, obviously, if you don't have a hairline, just think of the wolf that huffed and puffed. Obviously, it's so much easier with an airline. It's amazing how much crap and dust actually builds up, and you can do damage to your new clutch. You want to make sure it's definitely nice and clean. Same again with the one inside the actual flywheel. You have to be careful here now, because a lot of dust is going to come off, as you can see. You see, a lot of dust. Now, we are literally ready to put the clutch back in. On the flywheel, you'll see there's actually two little nipples that stick out. Oh, one here and one here. Sometimes there's three, sometimes there's obviously only two. Now they go through a little dowel, sorry, not a nipple, a little dowel. They go onto the clutch plate. Now we get the camera in the middle there. So you have to make sure you line this up properly, because otherwise the holes won't line up. So if you think, oh shit, I've got the wrong one, you might not necessarily have the wrong one. You just haven't got the dowels in line. Now again, I'm trying to do this and film at the same time, and I can tell you now, it isn't easy. So I do apologise about this. Hopefully it's coming across okay. Right, I can't do this and film, so I'm going to have to put this on and turn the camera back on. So as you can see, it's now on. We have 2, 4, 6 bolts all the way around. Now, none of these bolts are tight, they're only hand tight, and obviously there's still a gap between the clutch and the flywheel, because I have to now compress the spring, and as you tighten them you compress the spring. But what you have to do is you have to tighten these like you do a wheel. So you have to go opposite corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So you have to go opposite corners. You don't basically go clockwise or anti-clockwise. You just go opposite corners like a cross, and that's the way you tighten it. So I'm going to tighten this now, and as you tighten it you'll see these springs folding in. So give it a nice even tight and a good tight all the way around, and we'll be ready to put the gearbox back. You can see it's all tight, the springs are actually down. There's a big gap between where, and you see it's loose, where it was tight. So I'm going to now just literally take the clutch tension tool out, give it a bit of a wiggle, because it was tight going in, so just a bit of a wiggle. Now, and hopefully, if I just put the camera up level, you can, well, I don't know if I'm, maybe it doesn't look level, but it is, believe me. So what we need to do now is, obviously we're ready to put the gearbox back on, and I'm on my own, so it's going to be a nightmare putting it back on. So what we need to do is all these things that are hanging down, like the gear linkages. Oh, here we go, look, you can actually see the 3 bolts I took off the gear linkages. I couldn't show that before, but there you go. So we need to literally push these all out the way, tie them up if you have to, just so they're not interfering with anything. I'm gonna have to get some cable ties on that. Put that up out the way. As you can see, the clutch. Put everything out of the way, like that. I'm gonna have to move that out of the way, and to get a couple of cable ties now. So just basically, the easier it's gonna be for you with everything out of the way, and believe me, you want this part to be easy. So I'm just gonna move all these out of the way, cable tie them up, and then we get to put the gearbox back on. Oh, what fun on my own. YouTubers, I don't know how well this is gonna go, because obviously I do it slightly different, but now I'm trying to film it, I'm gonna have to kind of just change it around a little bit. I have my gearbox stand, as you can see, supporting the engine. That's what I normally use for obviously supporting the gearbox. I'm gonna have to physically lift it into place now. Hopefully shouldn't be a problem. I've got a couple of bolts in my pocket from the gearbox, because obviously if you're holding the gearbox up and you do get it in, you've got no bolts, you're screwed. So what I'm going to do is, I don't know how good idea this is to be honest, I'm going to leave the camera running and see how it goes. Wish me luck. Oh yeah! Oh, come on, quick. Oh, my arm's gone. We're in! Now, I wouldn't really advise doing it that way because two things could happen. You could drop the gearbox, fall on the floor and break. You could also drop the gearbox on yourself. So yeah, wouldn't really advise doing that, but hey, it worked for this. Hopefully it came across, you could see what I was doing. All I've basically done is I've lined it up. I've just put one bolt in hand tight just at the bottom, just so that'll help me enough to do the rest of them. So yeah, we're in. And as you can hear, I have a cold. And I haven't mentioned it, but it's about the 6th day now. So I thought I'd decide to mention just how brave I am by not mentioning it before, that I do have the man flu. And I've just put a gearbox in, so you know, I don't say it much and moan about it. Now YouTubers, remember the rule, don't tighten anything until you got all the bolts in. Basically all I've done is I've just put all the bolts back in the gearbox, I've tightened them all up, and I've put the 3 bolts back on the gear linkages, which I showed you before. Right, next thing I want to do is I want to try and get it on this engine mount so it can support itself, rather than me using jacks and all cross members and anything like that. Get it back on this gearbox mount here, so at least then the engine and everything is supporting itself. It's not going to do any damage and you're going to be fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to jack it up from the gearbox, not the engine. The reason you do it from the gearbox is obviously the gearbox is a lot thicker and stronger than the sump. And if you try and jack it up with the gearbox in, it would most probably do it, but you're just putting more pressure on the sump. So I just like to do it from the gearbox. Put these back on, which is obviously, basically goes like that. And then bolt the engine gearbox mount to it, and we're getting there. We're close. A few more hours and sorted. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing, but basically I'm just going to put this gearbox mount on just to help me make sure there's nothing caught in the wrong place. So this is kind of caught now, so let's move this out of the way. Out of the way now. Okay, now we have 2 brackets and a few nuts and bolts. So first thing we need to do is basically this goes on, you can see that, this goes on like that. So I can put this one on first and put the bolt through there. Make my life a little bit easier, saves me trying to hold 2 things at once. I can't even get this one in. Now 14 mil. Not going to tighten anything properly yet. So we need to get this down now. Bit of a wiggle, bit of a twist. And now we've got a little problem. It's on, it's in, but obviously the engine is moved over this way, so we need to push the engine. But the problem with doing that is it might not stay I need to push the engine back towards the back of the car. And yeah, this is the problem. It's not, the engine is kind of twisted out, so I'm going to have to maybe move the jack in, push the jack in a bit more, try and force the engine to the back of the car. Now, did that move? And yes, it did. Now, so start putting these other bolts down. Hopefully you can see all this. Still need to do a bit of twisting and wiggling. There we go. Sorted. Sorted. One more. Then just a few more twists, twisting the engine and stuff, and you'll get there. Just wiggle everything. Best that you take your time in this, because again, you know, you can easily cross thread the threads inside the gearbox, and if you cross thread them, this isn't going to last too much. Well, it won't last too long at all. And then of course, your problem is your engine will fall down. Now that the third one isn't lined up exactly, so make sure this guy's out of the way. What I'm doing is I'm going to jack it up a little bit, because we're a little bit off. So jack the engine up a little bit, and hopefully that should line me up. So jack the engine up, and it looks better. Here we go, sorted. Now we can also put this bolt in. So, we're in. Now, what I'm going to do is tighten all these bolts up. Again, I'm going to do the gearbox mount bolts first, and then I'm going to do the big main bolt. Then I release the jack, because the jack's still taking all the pressure at the minute, which is what you want. So tighten all them bolts on. I'll turn you back on. Now, all done. Engine is now supported itself. Obviously, we've still got to put the other bolts, or the other mounting brackets on, but the engine is basically holding itself in place. Sorted. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this for part 3 now. I'm just trying to split the videos up, because obviously if they're too long they kind of get boring, and at least if they're split up you can kind of watch them. And hopefully, I apologise if things aren't coming across too well. It's just very difficult to try and film it. That's why I'm showing you the parts once they're out, so hopefully you can kind of do it. If you're doing it anyway, it'll make a lot more sense than just watching the video if you're physically doing it. So look, hope this helped. Thumb up the video and subscribe, and don't forget to get your hands dirty. See you for the next one.